In 2025, the Beckham children stand at a point in their lives where childhood memories of paparazzi flashes feel distant, almost unreal, like scenes from a documentary they barely remember starring in. Once known as the adorable accessories trailing behind David and Victoria Beckham on red carpets, they have grown into thoughtful, ambitious young personalities, each carrying their own ambitions, anxieties, and dreams. And although their faces are familiar to millions around the world, the truth of their upbringing is far more layered than the glossy photographs ever revealed. Their life story is a blend of privilege and pressure, of opportunity and expectation, of being nurtured with love while being watched by an audience they never asked for. The Beckham name opened doors, but it also cast shadows. Shadows they would each eventually have to step out of. From the very beginning, their parents walked a difficult tightrope, raising children in a world built on celebrity, while trying to protect them from the very spotlight that defined their own careers. David and Victoria wanted them to have a childhood grounded in warmth, discipline, and normalcy, school runs, homework routines, family dinners, and values that reminded them that fame is temporary but character is permanent. But beyond the gate of every family home, a different reality waited. Camera lenses followed them to playgrounds, airport terminals, and vacation beaches. Strangers scrutinized their outfits, friendships, even their expressions. For most children, privacy is the default. For the Beckham siblings, it was a privilege rationed carefully, guarded fiercely, and often taken away without warning. By the time they entered their teenage years, the pressure to be something had already settled on their shoulders. People expected Brooklyn to be creative, Romeo to be athletic, Cruz to be musical, and Harper, still growing, to be a perfect blend of her stylish mother and her steady, composed father. Every move they made sparked commentary. Were they talented enough, ambitious enough, humble enough, extraordinary enough to justify the constant fascination? It was surreal to realize that while other kids were allowed to fail quietly, their mistakes had the potential to trend online before they even reached adulthood. And yet, rather than break under the noise, the Beckham children slowly learned to move with it, shape it, and eventually rise above it. By 2025, they had evolved into independent voices. They were no longer just the Beckham kids, but emerging individuals carving their own stories. Brooklyn, the eldest, had drifted far from the expectations placed on him in childhood, embracing art, photography, cooking, and self-expression. Romeo leaned into fashion and lifestyle, discovering confidence in creative industries while keeping a touch of his father's discipline. Cruz found a rhythm that spoke to him: music, production, and songwriting, quietly exploring a world where vulnerability and creativity coexist. And then there was Harper, the youngest, standing at the beginning of her journey, yet already radiating the gentle strength and confidence that hinted at a future entirely her own. Together, they represented a new kind of celebrity offspring, not defined by inheritance, but shaped by individuality. What made their evolution compelling was the contrast between perception and reality. The world saw glamour, the children experienced complexity. They grew up with access to extraordinary opportunities, yes, but they also grew up knowing that every opportunity came with commentary, every mistake with magnification, and every success with comparison. Their parents' legacy was both a pedestal and a measuring stick, and yet they learned to navigate it with a surprising level of emotional intelligence, learning when to engage with the public eye and when to walk away for the sake of their sanity. They developed a thick skin, a sharper instinct, and an inner compass shaped by years of living under microscopic attention. But perhaps the strongest part of their story is the bond they share with one another. Fame can isolate people, but it did the opposite for the Beckham siblings. They became each other's confidants, protectors, and reality checks. They learned early that only they fully understood what it meant to grow up famous but still want a life that felt normal. Their connection became a safety net, a way to stay grounded when the world felt too loud. They celebrated each other's achievements without jealousy and defended one another against the harsher corners of public opinion. In a world designed to divide, they held their unity like a shield. So as the world looks at the Beckham children in 2025, what emerges is not a narrative of privilege alone, but a story of growth, identity, and resilience. They embody the complexity of living in a world where your last name arrives before you do, where expectation precedes experience, and where fame is inherited long before it is earned. And yet, they continue to shape their futures with intention, curiosity, and courage. They are moving beyond the roles the world once assigned to them and stepping into identities that feel truly their own. Their journey is still unfolding, but one thing is certain: they are far more than the famous children of iconic parents. They are young adults learning to write their own stories, and the world is watching with fascination as they do. Brooklyn Beckham's story begins with expectations he never agreed to carry. From the moment he was born, the world quietly assumed he would become a mirror of his father, a prodigy destined for the football pitch, a future star already written into the next chapter of the Beckham legacy. But childhood dreams don't always align with the narratives others write for you. And Brooklyn, with his thoughtful eyes and introspective personality, always felt the pull of creativity far more strongly than the roar of stadium crowds. Even as a child, he was drawn to art, photography, and quiet observation, not the pressure-driven world of elite athletics. He admired his father deeply, but sensed early on that his own story was going to unfold along a very different path. Growing up, it was easy for the public to misunderstand him. They saw a boy given opportunities most people could only dream of: access to professionals, exposure to global talent, and a platform built on one of the most recognizable surnames in the world. But they didn't see the internal battle between wanting to honor his family while also wanting to breathe without the weight of pre-written expectations. The moment he picked up a camera as a teenager, something clicked, a feeling of purpose, of clarity. It wasn't about avoiding football. It was about finding a space where he could be judged for his own talent rather than the legacy attached to him. Photography gave him that freedom. It gave him a voice. But trying to build a creative career under the harsh glare of public scrutiny is a challenge even seasoned artists struggle with. For Brooklyn, it became a daily balancing act. Every photo he posted, every project he attempted, every artistic choice he made attracted criticism and commentary. Some questioned his talent, others dismissed his passion as a hobby allowed by privilege. Yet what critics often forget is that creativity thrives in vulnerability, not perfection. And Brooklyn, unlike many celebrity children, was willing to try, fail, learn, and try again. He never hid behind his name. He put his work out into the world knowing it would be judged harder than most. That alone required courage. As he ventured deeper into photography, his life took another unexpected turn, one that would shape his identity in ways far beyond his career. Meeting Nicola Peltz brought love, partnership, and a sense of belonging he rarely showed publicly. Their relationship quickly became a magnet for attention. Their wedding, lavish and extravagant, sparked headlines for months. To the world, it was a glamorous union between two wealthy families. But behind the spectacle, Brooklyn was simply a young man in love, trying to build a future with someone who understood the complexities of living under constant scrutiny. Nicola became more than a partner. She became a sense of home. And yet, with this new chapter, came a new wave of public opinions, assumptions, and scrutiny that sometimes overshadowed their happiness. Brooklyn's shift from photography into culinary arts introduced another layer to his evolution. Cooking brought him joy, grounding, and the kind of creative satisfaction he had been searching for. The kitchen became his new canvas. To outsiders, it seemed like he was jumping between passions, unable to commit. But those close to him knew the truth. He was exploring, experimenting, discovering himself without fear of reinvention. It was the exact opposite of uncertainty. It was growth. While many people spend their 20s pretending to have everything figured out, Brooklyn was brave enough to try everything until something felt right. That willingness to evolve, to pivot, to learn became his strength. Yet the conversation around his career often missed the emotional reality of his journey. The world wanted him to choose a lane, stick to it, and dominate it. But Brooklyn wasn't trying to win a race. He was trying to build a life rooted in creativity, authenticity, and self-expression. Every passion he pursued wasn't a distraction. It was a pathway toward understanding his own identity. And unlike many young adults, he had to navigate these discoveries, while millions watched, judged, and compared him to his parents at every turn. Still, he moved forward, determined to earn respect not through perfection, but through persistence. Through it all, what defines Brooklyn most is not his resume but his resilience. He has endured criticism that would crush many aspiring artists. He has faced comparisons he never asked for. He has made mistakes publicly, learned publicly, grown publicly. But he has also shown remarkable emotional maturity, supporting his siblings, uplifting his wife, cherishing his family, and continuously exploring the creative passions that make him feel alive. He might not have chosen fame, but he chooses every day to navigate it with sincerity. By 2025, Brooklyn Beckham stands not as a replica of his father nor a character written by the media, but as a young man who has slowly, deliberately, and courageously built a life that reflects who he is, not who the world wants him to be. His journey is still unfolding, but one truth has become clear. Brooklyn is not running from his legacy. He is simply writing his own chapter beside it, and doing so with heart, humility, and an undeniable desire to create something meaningful on his own terms. Romeo Beckham's life has always been defined by contrasts. Quiet intensity wrapped in a spotlight he never asked for, a gentle personality carrying the weight of a last name associated with global fame, and a future that began as a shadow of his father's legacy before transforming into something uniquely his own. If Brooklyn was the creative wanderer, Romeo was the disciplined one. From a young age, he carried an unmistakable athletic spark, the kind that made the world whisper that maybe he would be the one to continue David's football story. He looked like his father, moved like him, even shared the same calm focus in front of cameras. But what outsiders didn't see was the fragile layer beneath the expectation, the health challenges, the emotional battles, and the internal shift that would ultimately lead him down a very different path. As a child, Romeo struggled with epilepsy, a condition that demanded caution, sacrifice, and patience. While other kids ran freely, he faced limitations that constantly reminded him of his vulnerability. It wasn't just about being careful, it was about confronting the terrifying reality that his body could betray him without warning. For a boy growing up under intense public attention, it was a silent war fought behind private doors. His parents protected him fiercely, shielding his struggles from the noise of the media, but even then, the weight of his condition shaped him. It made him thoughtful, observant, and aware of his limits. And yet, beneath that softness was a resilience that astonished everyone who truly knew him. When he became strong enough to pursue sports, Romeo started training with a determination that surprised even David. Football wasn't just an activity. It was proof to himself that he wasn't defined by his condition. He trained tirelessly, improving his skills, pushing his body, proving he could run, compete, and dream, just like anyone else. For a time, it seemed certain that he was walking directly into the future the world had predicted. But life has its own narrative, and sometimes ambition isn't enough to overcome the realities written into your bones. The intensity of professional training, the relentless physical demand, and the emotional toll eventually made it clear that football couldn't be his forever path, not in the way the world expected. But fate, in its unpredictable way, offered him something else: fashion. And in fashion, Romeo found a new kind of voice, a quieter voice, but one that carried power. He inherited David's sharp features and Victoria's sense of style, a combination that made him a natural fit for runway shoots and brand campaigns. Suddenly, he wasn't the boy trying to outrun his limitations. He was the young man stepping into a spotlight that celebrated him for who he was, rather than who people expected him to be. Modeling didn't require him to battle pain or hide vulnerability. It allowed him to channel his sensitivity, confidence, and elegance into an art form that felt authentic. The fashion world noticed immediately. Agencies approached. Luxury brands extended offers. For the first time, Romeo wasn't compared to his father, he was admired for himself. And yet, with visibility came scrutiny. Every campaign he booked, every outfit he wore, every relationship he had became a topic of online conversation. People dissected his romantic life, made assumptions about his personality, and tried to fit him into neat categories. But Romeo was never one to expose his private world. Unlike his brothers, who often shared glimpses of their daily lives, he remained intentionally reserved. That mystery added to his appeal, but it also created misunderstandings. Some assumed he was aloof or distant. Others thought he lacked direction. The truth was far simpler. Romeo valued quiet. He valued authenticity. He valued emotional safety in a world that offered him very little privacy. His relationships, inevitably public, became learning experiences that shaped his emotional maturity. The world watched him fall in and out of love, attaching meaning to every breakup and romantic shift. But beneath the headlines was a young man trying to understand himself, trying to find companionship that felt meaningful, not performative. He valued real connection, something rare in a world where fame often confuses attention with affection. Every heartbreak taught him something: the importance of self-worth, the need to protect his peace, and the power of choosing stability over spectacle. Meanwhile, his modeling career continued to rise. Brands appreciated his professionalism, his quiet charisma, the way he could communicate emotion without words. His presence evoked a blend of innocence and maturity, making him adaptable across high fashion, streetwear, and editorial campaigns. And although many assumed modeling was an easy path for someone with his background, Romeo brought discipline into every project, a trait he learned from his father's athletic mindset. He prepared rigorously, took direction seriously, and treated every shoot as a chance to refine his craft. He wasn't just a famous surname, he was an artist developing his own identity in an industry that often swallows young talent whole. But perhaps the most compelling part of Romeo's journey was his relationship with fame itself. He didn't crave it, didn't pursue it, and didn't allow it to dictate his choices. Fame existed around him like a storm he had learned to walk through quietly. He protected his inner world through small, intentional habits, spending time with family, nurturing hobbies away from public eyes, focusing on personal growth, and letting his actions speak louder than his social media presence. In an era where celebrity children often chase virality, Romeo chose subtlety, and in choosing subtlety, he created an aura more powerful than any headline. By 2025, Romeo Beckham stands not as an heir to a football empire or a product of fame, but as a young man who discovered strength in vulnerability and identity in reinvention. His story is not about glory or scandal, but about quiet resilience, the kind that grows in the spaces between pressure and purpose. He is proof that a legacy can be honored without being imitated, and that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is step off the path the world expects and build a new one with intention, grace, and quiet confidence. Cruz Beckham's story begins in the most unexpected space, the quiet, rhythm-filled corner of a family home where a child discovers his voice not through fame, not through legacy, but through melody. While Brooklyn explored cameras and Romeo gravitated toward fashion, Cruz found himself drawn to sound. Even as a little boy, he hummed tunes under his breath, tapped rhythms on tables, and mimicked the pop stars his mother played around the house. Music wasn't something he learned. It was something that poured out of him effortlessly. And for a child growing up in one of the world's most public families, creativity offered something rare: a sense of escape. He could disappear into melody, into beats, into lyrics that felt like they belonged only to him. But being the son of Victoria Beckham, a former global pop sensation, meant the world made assumptions before he even opened his mouth. People treated his musical curiosity like a given, as if talent must flow through bloodlines. Yet the truth was far more personal. Music became his language, a way to understand himself in a life where everything else felt predetermined. He wasn't chasing his mother's past, he was reaching for his own future. And while the public saw him as the quote-quote singer of the family, he was still discovering what that truly meant. Growing up in the era of social media added another challenge. Everything he shared, even the smallest musical experiment, became content. A casual video of him singing could explode into headlines. A studio visit could spark rumors of an album. Fans compared him to young Justin Bieber. Critics questioned whether his interest was genuine or a product of privilege. And through it all, Cruz quietly learned the hardest lesson of all: that creative passion becomes heavier when the world treats it like a performance instead of a discovery. He wanted space to grow, but fame often refuses to give space. It gives attention instead. As he got older, Cruz began working with mentors, producers, vocal coaches, writers, who heard something raw and powerful in his voice. They helped him refine his sound, shape his identity, and build confidence in a world that can be unforgiving to young artists. But unlike so many celebrity offspring who rush into the spotlight, he chose a different path: patience. He didn't chase singles, didn't force releases, didn't try to become the next overnight sensation. He spent years studying music, experimenting with styles, and learning to write lyrics that reflected his own life rather than anyone else's expectations. That restraint, that willingness to grow quietly, became one of the most admirable parts of his journey. And yet, the world around him continued to watch. Every relationship he entered became a public topic. Every breakup sparked speculation. Every decision was measured not by its authenticity, but by its proximity to the Beckham legacy. This scrutiny shaped him into someone more cautious, more private, more protective of the things that mattered. Unlike Brooklyn, who shared freely, or Romeo, who moved carefully through fame, Cruz developed a shield, one made not of distance but of discernment. He didn't hide, he simply chose who he allowed into his world. Still, music remained his grounding force. Late-night studio sessions, afternoons spent writing lyrics, moments of vulnerability captured in melodies that only a few people heard. These became the heartbeat of his identity. He wasn't just chasing a career. He was building a foundation, brick by brick, note by note. And in doing so, he revealed something rare for someone his age: emotional intelligence. He understood that talent alone doesn't build longevity. Authenticity does. If Cruz represents quiet artistic evolution, Harper Beckham represents something even more extraordinary: a young girl growing up with grace, confidence, and individuality in the center of one of the world's most watched families. She entered the public eye the moment she entered the world. People analyzed her outfits at age 3, her mannerisms at age 5, her expressions at age 7. She didn't just grow up with attention, she grew up with scrutiny that no child should ever have to face. And yet, she blossomed. Harper is the only girl among 3 brothers, the youngest child in a family already etched into the fabric of global pop culture. But instead of being overwhelmed by expectations, she became the quiet star of the family's emotional universe. David's softness, Victoria's elegance, her brother's protectiveness, all of it shaped her into a young girl with surprising poise and confidence. She is athletic, artistic, empathetic, and grounded, traits that rarely coexist naturally in children raised in privilege. Victoria, in particular, became intentional about shielding Harper from the harsher edges of social media. She limited her exposure, controlled what was posted, and kept her far from the digital world that can be so devastating for young girls. The result was visible in Harper's demeanor. She grew up comfortable with herself, unaffected by the harsh comparisons and comments that often plagued children online. Her confidence came not from validation, but from family, from education, from experiences that allowed her to explore who she was without an audience dictating her value. Her bond with her father became one of the most talked about dynamics in the Beckham household, not because of spectacle, but because of sincerity. David, known globally for his athletic legacy, became a figure of warmth and devotion in his daughter's life. Their moments, whether cooking together, traveling, or simply walking hand in hand, revealed a softness that touched millions. And perhaps nothing captured her emotional depth more than the speech she delivered in honor of her mother, a moment that showed the world a young girl wise beyond her years. But Harper is not defined by sentiment alone. She is determined, curious, and quietly ambitious. She excels academically, enjoys sports, and embraces creativity with the same seriousness her brothers apply to their own crafts. She is growing into a young woman with a strong sense of identity, raised in a home that values humility alongside success. And in a world obsessed with celebrity children, Harper stands out not because she seeks attention, but because she carries herself with a maturity rare for her age. Together, Cruz and Harper represent the evolving heart of the Beckham family's legacy. One is a young artist refining his voice, shaping a future born from passion rather than pressure. The other is a rising personality, learning to navigate a world that watches her every move while remaining grounded and authentic. Both serve as reminders that fame does not have to dictate identity, that children raised in the spotlight can still grow up with intention, individuality, and emotional depth. By 2025, the Beckham children, Brooklyn, Romeo, Cruz, and Harper, no longer exist as extensions of their parents' fame. They are individuals, each with their own dreams, their own battles, their own stories unfolding in real time. Their journeys are proof that legacy is not destiny, and that even in the shadow of global icons, the next generation can step forward with voices entirely their own. As the Beckham children continue stepping into their own lives, the world watches with a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and often uninvited speculation. Fame, after all, is a double-edged sword, glittering on the surface, sharp underneath. And no family understands that truth more intimately than the Beckhams. By 2025, the global obsession surrounding them has evolved, reshaped by new media, new narratives, and a new generation determined to forge identities beyond the glow of their last name. Yet even as Brooklyn, Romeo, Cruz, and Harper pursue their own paths, they face an unavoidable reality. The world never stops trying to weave their stories back into the myth of their parents. For Brooklyn, this meant living with a spotlight that intensified rather than faded. His marriage to Nicola Peltz became tabloid fuel, the lavish wedding, the rumored tensions between families, the whispers about career choices. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a theory. But beyond the noise stood a young man simply trying to live authentically. He didn't crave perfection, he craved purpose. And every time he picked up a camera, tried a recipe, or stepped into a project that made sense to him, he chipped away at the expectations that once felt suffocating. His journey is the most public, the most dissected, yet also the most misunderstood. He isn't wandering, he's exploring. And exploration, as messy as it appears, is a form of growth. Romeo's story unfolds differently, quieter yet no less compelling. The fashion industry embraced him, often highlighting his uncanny resemblance to David. But the glare of modeling was not as effortless as the cameras made it seem. Every pose, every campaign, every relationship he entered became a silent test of resilience. People expected ego. Instead, he carried humility. People expected entitlement. Instead, he worked harder than anyone anticipated. His shift from football to fashion wasn't a pivot born from pressure, but from clarity. He knew what his body could handle, knew where his passions flowed, and he chose a path that honored his well-being rather than the world's assumptions. In an industry built on surfaces, Romeo became a reminder that inner strength matters most. Cruz, meanwhile, continued carving out a lane entirely his own, away from the predicted routes of sports or fashion. Music demanded vulnerability, demanded patience, demanded self-discovery. And he surrendered to all of it. While the public waited for a debut album or a viral track, he focused on craft instead of speed. In an era where young artists are pushed to produce endlessly, he chose intention. That restraint revealed something profound. Fame may open doors, but discipline keeps them open. His quiet evolution reflects a lesson he absorbed early. Authenticity cannot be rushed. And then there is Harper, the youngest, the most protected, the most symbolically important. For many, she represents the future of the Beckham legacy. Not because she's expected to fill her mother's shoes, but because she embodies the emotional heart of the family. She carries both softness and strength, nurtured not by external validation but by the careful, deliberate guidance of her parents. In a world where young girls are pressured to grow up too fast, Harper is growing up right on time. She represents the Beckham family at their most human, loving, unified, and grounded. Across all 4 children, a shared truth emerges. Their lives may unfold under public fascination, but the foundation beneath them is deeply private. A family bound not by branding but by loyalty, not by perfection, but by perseverance. The world can speculate, criticize, romanticize, but the Beckham children continue moving forward, each step redefining what it means to be born into legacy, yet shaped by choice. And perhaps that is the most powerful part of their story. They are not inheritors of fame, they are architects of their own futures.